Today on Brilliance Business TV, we have Harry Singha, speaker, author, mentor, philanthropist. Harry began his speaking career at the tender age of 16, and now, after 30 years of experience and serving over 1 million people across the world, he's recognized as one of the world's most inspirational and transformational speakers and humanitarian. President and CEO of a UK-based international consultancy firm working with clients on 6 continents to create heart-centered, transformational leadership cultures. Stay tuned. Welcome to Brilliance Business TV, conversations with leading experts in business. I am your host, Mark Stephen Pooler. We have an incredible guest today, Harry Singha. Harry has spoken with many of the greats. I'm really looking forward to a conversation with him. How do we find our authentic voices? That's the topic of our conversation today. I just want to make an official shout out to our show sponsors, Dreamweaver Artist Ranch. We are streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube. We're also streaming through mspnewsglobal.com, and we're also on the E360 TV network under Fresh Takes, going out to Apple TV, Fire TV, Android TV, Roku, and many, many more. Let's bring in our incredible guest, Harry Singha. Harry, welcome to Brilliance Business TV.
Hey, Mark, it's an honor to be with you and add to the list of your many, many prestigious guests, many of them good friends of mine. So yeah, let's add value. Let's rock and roll.
Firstly, I want to apologise to everyone today. My voice is not at its best, so do forgive me for any croakiness. But let's get on with this incredible conversation. So, Harry, I would like you to just share a little bit of your background. I know you started off with some abuse and domestic violence that you went through and started speaking at the age of 16, which is so young. Just take us through that journey a little bit, will you?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to say something straight away off the top of that, Mark. It's when someone says start speaking when you're 16, it's whenever you're coaching people as speakers, you tend to get to a point where people are like saying, speaking, how can you speak? But I just want to get this clear. Professional speaking. I was speaking as soon as I could talk, right? So I had the gift of the gab at a very early age. But let me just say, based on what you said there, yeah, I had a very colorful upbringing as a child, in that sense of having an alcoholic father who, physically abused me, but more so, what was more painful for me was that witnessing my mum being physically abused by my father. And that's, like you said, a child who experienced domestic violence. And, most of the years that was growing up, I didn't think there was anything wrong with me. I thought there was something wrong with him. And, the biggest question in my head was, WTF is going on? So I always had those questions and that conflict in my mind. And, I had so many what I call worst days leading up to it. But at 15, I had to leave home for my own safety. And, I won't need to go into the whole story here, but it's at 15, I had to make a choice because what does a young kid from East London do who's already angry and then gets forced to leave his mom at home with the monster that was there? You know, you can get destructive or you can become constructive. And I did a bit of both, to be true. But luckily, thankfully, I got a lot more constructive. So that's how my people say, how did you start? And I usually say with a lot of pain, a lot of pain. You know, I remember sleeping off on the streets of central London at the age of 11, 12, 13. But never thought anything was wrong with me until the day I had to leave home. And now there was something wrong with me because social services involved, school seems to know what's going on. And I just needed something to fill my time because I was so unhappy about taken away from home. And I would always help other people. So my journey really started because everything at home was pain, but I'd go to school and think, if I saw anybody what I call suffering or not happy, I'd think they must have it worse than me. And then when I was out on the streets of central London, I'd be thinking the homeless dudes had it worse than me. So it was always the case of that. But yeah, 16 years old was the turning point when I first got paid to do what back then it wasn't called speaking. You know, I was running workshops, I was doing training and so on. But yeah, that's a little bit of the background into how I started and what I was doing. And then, you know, I just got very good at what I was doing just by sheer virtue of, you know, so many beautiful people being around me and taking me under their wings. So that's probably the, if you want to delve deeper into that, Mark, I'm more than happy to do that.
Firstly, thank you for sharing some of those vulnerabilities. I know firsthand what alcohol can do to families. We had an alcoholic partner. It's a hard thing to have to be around, and that can really affect you inside. And domestic violence I have been through as well. So I really relate to that, and it makes sense now why you serve on such a big scale, Harry. You're really all about service. I really want to dig deep into more of the business side of things. I think you've shared enough value with all the traumatic side of things there. Now, you are the founder of the World Class Speakers Academy. Tell us all about that, Harry.
Sure. Well, I mean, a good segue that leads on to it. So when I started 16, it was all about, there was stuff I wanted to get across to young people. So when I found other professionals being taught child protection, I was like, well, why aren't we teaching young people this? So I used to just do training that was not being given to young people. And at a very young age, I'd already, you know, I was too young to become qualified as a therapist. So, you know, I was getting sent on training, but I wasn't being qualified. So I'd be setting up my own projects. And my journey started setting up counseling projects and so on because I was studying it. I spent 5 years studying the same counseling course. So it was until I was 21 or 22, they wanted to qualify me. But I started doing it. But at the same time, I always had this entrepreneurial spirit because at the age of 18, I'd had like 2.5 years of training behind me. I'd set up projects, but I had that I'm too young. And I was really going to take a young Asian kid with an East London accent seriously when it comes to therapy. Even though I knew I was good, I'd worked with the people that knew me. So I set up like Harry Singha Associates when I was 18. And what I was doing was hiring those other counselors who were training with me to take on the counseling work. So I would take a slice out. So my entrepreneurial journey started then, but I needed to find a placement, and I started working with a substance misuse organization. And it was in the 90s, and it was just, there wasn't a lot of young people and drugs. Back then it was more alcohol. But at that point there, we set up the first ever young people substance misuse organization. So I started working with there, and then it was like voluntary, it was like voluntary sector. And I started to get into social work, and I started doing all of these things, but it was where I got to, wherever I was, whatever role I was, whatever organization. I remember I dabbled with social services departments, with Bernardo's. I spent like 3 years with Bernardo's. Every time I was there, I would always end up doing something in the training and development departments. And it was like, why? Because I was like, that's my place. That's where we go do training. I wanted training and I wanted to deliver training. And so my whole life had been delivering presentations, doing stuff, workshops, AGMs. And my original journey was all about youth leadership because, like you said, everything that happened to me I knew that for me to turn my life around, I needed to go back to young people and help them answer the question, WTF is going on. So everything I was learning was to help other young people. But at the same time, in 1996, when I created my foundation, I knew it was about youth leadership and vulnerable women. Why? I wanted to provide programs that my mum didn't have access to. And that was like my big reason. That was my why, what I was doing. But for years, I just kept doing what I was doing. And every now and again, I'd be invited to speak at other organizations. You know, I got involved with Tony Robbins and everybody in my 20s. And so the whole personal development world. And then I was being called to speak, but I never really got into training other people as speakers, except for my own private clients. And people were coming to me because I was, you know, one of the founders and original coaches in the UK. And I was helping people become life coaches. But my own private clients were coming. They said they were coming for coaching, but what they really came for was the lifestyle. Like, how is this guy going around doing all of this stuff, earning income, and he's doing what he loves? But I would also give them speaker training within the work that we were doing. But the truth be told, Mark, I got pissed off with what was happening in the speaking industry. About over a decade ago, it just suddenly there was so many speakers and so many speaker coaches, and it was, you know, it just got really cheesy, and it also got very unethical. So I'd said, like, I want to now, you know, make a mark in here. And that's when I really started the World Class Speakers Academy. I thought there's room to do this ethically, authentically, and also change this paradigm shift of the type of training that was coming forward. And I wanted to call it world class just because of standard, but also it was the acronym of how I was teaching people how to become speakers. So that's how it all really started. And, you know, since then it was like, you know, training for people who are just starting out, training for people who want to become professional, and also for those that wanted to get right to the elite end of the whole circuit as, you know, world-class professional speakers. So that's how it's really started.
So what really stands out to me, Harry, firstly, the age that you started professional speaking at the age of 16. I was crazy at that age, partying, clubbing, taking all sorts of drugs. And also when you're talking about this, how you serve all of the different foundations and charities, etc., they're really causes that need support. So I know how much satisfaction that gives, because even myself, when I speak in schools around bullying, drug awareness, mental health, body image issues, I do that for service. It's a secondary business because it gives me so much satisfaction. So I know that must really give you satisfaction. You're all about helping people to find their authentic voice. So my question is, Harry, how did you cope at the age of 16 speaking? Because I know with me, it took a lot of personal development, inner work, self-improvement, fear. Really, I had to do a lot of work to get myself comfortable on stage. Now you train others to deal with that. How did you deal with that at age 16? I can't hear you, Harry. No, I can't hear you. You may be best taking them out. For some reason, your volume has gone. Let me try and unmute. Try muting and unmuting, Harry.
Mute.
That's it. I can hear you again. Did you hear the question?
I heard the question. What it was, my earpods had gone, and then I thought I'll quickly put this on very subtly, but not so subtly. But if you
Don't
can hear
worry.
me coming out clear with this, and I don't need to put headphones on.
No, it's all good.
Perfect. I heard your question, right? And I was waiting for you to finish before I jumped in. So here's the thing: the question in relation to how did I cope with speaking and public speaking at such a young age. People have this misconception that, yeah, you just must have been one of these little kids that just wanted to talk. And no. I was really good with helping people one-to-one, right? I'd be like, having a conversation with people was great. The moment it was like, yeah, go on, you're going to go and speak to, it was like a group of people. It was horrible, because I wasn't just like, I always say this, there's a big difference between an audience of adults and an audience of young people.
Yes, I agree.
Speakers, right? Give me the world's best speakers and I'll take them into a school, and then it's suddenly like they speak faster or they overcompensate because they're not
scary speaking to kids.
Is it going through? So I was honing my skills with young people who really didn't want to be in the room that I was talking about and so on. But truth be told, Mark, back then I was so driven. Right, really important lesson for people listening. My reason for giving the talk was far greater than my ability to be able to do it, right?
Yes.
So I remember we used to, especially when we was working in a substance misuse organization, we'd get in a car and we'd be driving to a school and we'd be talking about harm minimization. So we was going to educate people about drug use and how to minimize the harm. And we'd be making up the workshop as we get to the school, right? And then it would be like me that was just pushed out there. And I remember it was like that, like the duck or the swan on the outside, on the top of the water. It looks really good, but you're paddling. So it looked like I was confident, but I used to come off, and I call it stage. I used to come out of that workshop sweating and feel like I'd just done a high intensity workout, because I was coming from my head and I was trying to get all this stuff. So it was rough. It was really rough, but I'd always come out of it thinking, yeah, we made a difference. We got that information across. It would have been easier if we did. But I was watching there wasn't too many speakers for me to watch. And I remember one of the guys one of my first mentors in the business world, he was like one of the directors of the organization where we was at. And he was like the guy that they all looked to, right? 6'2", Jamaican guy, bald head, really fit and muscled, everything. And he'd walk on with presence, and he'd walk on the stage, and before he's speaking, he'd do it like a lion. And most of the other young guys would be copying him, right, when they were doing this stuff. And I was like, I can't be him. I don't want to be him. Does it feel right? But I said, where does he get this from? And I asked him a question. And I said to him, Viv, how did you become a great speaker? What did you do? And he was like, yeah, well, I speak at 3 or 4 conferences a year, right? And then so my brain, I remember I had Tony Robbins and people in my head going, you can manipulate time by increasing things. So I was like, cool. If he has been doing this, and he said he's been doing it for 5 years, and I thought, cool, if I do 10 in a year, I could catch up to him within like a couple of years. But I didn't do 10. I just literally every opportunity for speaking, AGMs, this, that, and the other, training. And I remember the moment I'd made that decision that I was going to get better as a speaker, it literally did come from practice, from doing. But I learned a lot from people who I thought, that doesn't work. So I learned a lot of what not to do on my journey as I learned what to do. And you already picked it up, Mark. One of the key lessons I learned all the way through was authenticity. How can I get this message across? How can I take some of these things that I'm watching people do and implement myself? The number of times I sat in an audience thinking, I could do better than that. I could do better than that. And after a while, I got over my ego when someone else said to me that they could do better than someone else. And I said, then why aren't you? And when something comes out of your mouth and you need to hear it, I was like, why aren't I? How are these people getting invited to all the events? How are these people making money from it, right? Because back then I wasn't making money. It was the organizations that I was working with. I didn't realize they were making a lot of money from me doing it. So I learned it through the school of hard knocks and just pushed through. And, that's why part of creating the speaking program was what I would have loved if someone had just sat me down. Because back then there was no speaker coaching, no training. And if it was going to be way beyond any budget that I could imagine back then. So, yeah, it wasn't just plain sailing. But the biggest answer to your question, Mark, would be, I had a big enough why. We were saving lives. We were saving lives with what we were teaching. Plus, I also knew that I hadn't gone through, my biggest transformation in my own life was when I had at 24, 25 years old, I had a conversation with a 15-year-old me who left home at 15. And I apologized to him. And I said, I'm sorry, I've associated all the shit, all the terrible things in my life to what happened to you. And I said, that's no more. There is greatness in my life. And that's also based on because of what happened to you. And that's when my life started changing. So when I was in a school, I looked intense. And it was intense because I was like still struggling with it. But I was also intense because I had so much of a desire to help at least one of those young people in the room with, something that would save them from the suffering that I went through. So that's what drove me. Hopefully that answers your question there, Mark.
I was just going to say, Harry, great answer. I was imagining a really polished, brilliant speaker at the age of 16, but it's humbling to know, just like me at the beginning of my journey, it is a case of jumping in at the deep end and paddling your way through it and practice. And there's no better practice than getting up and doing it as well, Harry. So you really answered that question brilliantly. We just need to go to
a gift to your audience is don't aim for the polished speaker. It's just absolutely a given that after a while I'd started to do what other people told me, and it was like there were some people teaching me this is how to make the perfect thing you do, and I realized that's not what I wanted. I wanted
coming
to be me.
From the heart, being yourself and authentic. Stay where you are, Harry. I just need to go to a commercial break. Thank you everyone for joining us for part 1 of Brilliance Business TV. Join us after the commercial break.
Hello, this is Stephen Buckner, and just wanted to tell you I support the Dreamweaver Project. It's a great project where, artists such as myself will be able to come together and basically collaborate and to have a retreat to feel accepted and welcome. And that's something that artists here and around the world could always benefit from. So I just want to say, please support the Dreamweaver Project. I think it's for a great cause, and I salute all the independent artists out there and artists that are signed as well, and have a wonderful day.
Welcome back to Brilliance Business TV, conversations with leading experts in business. We are having a conversation with the incredible Harry Singha. Harry, I have really enjoyed the conversation so far. You've shared your personal journey, some of the hardships that you have been through. You've shared a little bit about going and speaking from the age of 16 up until launching the World Class Speakers Academy. So my next question is all about us finding our authentic voice. So tell us a little bit how we can find our authentic voice, and tell us a little bit about how you support your clients to really speak well and to be good presenters and to use their authentic voices.
Sure, absolutely. As you went into the commercial break, I was like, I don't think we spoke about the authentic voice bit, right? So brilliant. Thanks for bringing it straight back, Mark. 2 things on that. One is anytime I work with anybody, whether it's, elite business owners or professional sports stars who are thinking like they want to get into public speaking, I always tell people there are 3 areas. Number 1, how to create content. But it's not just creating any content, to world-class content, meaning it's memorable for you to deliver, it's memorable for the audience so then they actually use it, because then it becomes valuable, and also positioning you as an authority. So there's a whole bunch of stuff about how to create content. The second part is how to deliver. So one is creating the content, then it's the actual delivery, the presentation, and then that's got to be inspirational, transformational, and what we call edutaining. But at the same time, it's also about how do you master understanding how people learn and incorporating all of those things into your delivery. And then the third part is what I call monetizing your message. So
yes,
you're
really important.
Yeah, 100%. And there's money sitting, and I always say, and I'm very, very, when I talk about that third part, monetizing your message, there's always a strap line underneath it says whether you want to or choose not to, right?
It took me a while to monetize. I found it really hard.
Yeah, and I want all world-class speakers, especially the ones that say, Harry, I do speaking, it's not for profit. And I say, brilliant, welcome to the world of not-for-profit distribution. So you don't have to have the profit and put it in your pocket. But if you could learn the tools that other speakers are using where you don't have to do too much different, but there's an opportunity to generate income from it, you can then divert that to whatever your social objective or charity or cause is. So I'd rather they know how to use those tools and not use them, because what people forget, it's the tools of influence, the tools of sales, whether it's for a product or a coaching mentoring program, are the same tools to take a bunch of young guys and say, put down your guns and pick up pencils, right? You're still selling something. So I want to make sure that those parts that are in those areas, everybody gets. So that's the first bit, Mark, about what I always cover. When it comes to authentic voice, for the premium end of my clients who are already what we call, they've made it hugely successful in what most people call success, finances, raving fans, impact, they've done that. They tend to hit a plateau, and you already mentioned it, where huge achievement, but without the fulfillment. And this is the part where people then come and go, right, I want to make more of an impact. And I want to do it in a way where I create legacy, not just financial legacy. And then they're looking to craft a message or communication or some wisdom that they've created over their life. And then they present themselves to me. And I say to them, no, first thing we're going to do is we're going to take you through a process. Find your voice and serve with impact. And they're like, yeah, cool, that's speaker training. I said, no, here's what find your voice is. And to answer your question now, Mark, I've always said, finding your voice is really getting in tune with who you are at a point from energy. And others will call it find your purpose, but I wanted to go deeper than that, because when I say find your voice, I want people to get clear that voice is an instrument. My daughter is, her strength is music. Ever since she was a young child, she was singing. She went to a school and she was playing 5 or 6 different instruments. And when she entered Young Musician of the Year each year, you have to type in a section, like in the form, your name, where you're from, and you have to specify your instrument. She would put voice. And that was when I learned your voice is an instrument, even though I knew that intellectually. So when you realize that if we can think of our voice as an instrument, if we think of a piano, a guitar, a violin, how do these instruments communicate?
Yes.
Vibration and energy. Vibration and energy. And I think I mentioned to Mark, and especially to other people that know me, the word energy, for me, when I talk about it, I spell it slightly differently. Because when I say energy, as an Asian, we always, when we meet our aunties or uncles or elders, by showing respect, we would call them Uncle G, Auntie G, Nanny G. When I'm in audiences with people, I say, what's the most important G? Most people say Mummy G. And I say, no, energy. Because what I mean is, that the Paloma Faith song? You've got to sing your own song. You've got to play your own music, sing your own song, even if no one else is singing along. I want everybody to know what their vibrational energy is. And many of us, it's love, it's making a difference. So even if you are a top Premiership footballer, if your passion is love and oneness, bring it to your game before you start creating a talk on it. So Mark, one of the parts of finding your voice is, what is your core energy? What is your core vibration? that makes your heart sing. That's the first part. It's like, you know, for me, you've already said it, service, right? So whatever I'm doing, I'm building service into it. So find your voice is about finding your core vibrational energy. When you've got that, bring that to every part of your life, your relationships, your work, your business, bring it there, because that will give you fulfillment. And then we start looking for your gifts. You find your gifts, your messages. So remember, one of my favorite programs, I spent years training and showing people how to turn your worst days into best days. Then I went into doing that, but also training people to become world-class speakers. Now I'm really passionate about creating what I call thriver speakers, people who are turning their worst days into their best days and becoming world-class speakers. So the answer to find your voice and serve with impact is, let's find out what your core message is. But finding voice, I just want, Mark, you could come back. My answer to that, that's what it means for me. How I help people get their voice out. We can go into more detail if you wish, we've got time. But that's what I want to get across of what find your voice means to me. Find your core vibrational energy that makes your heart sing, and bring that to everything you do, and then start communicating your gifts from there.
Nicely said. And like you mentioned, I mentioned it, I found it really hard to monetize in the beginning. I spoke everywhere for free, didn't earn a penny, all over the UK. But you can only do that for so long, Harry. There comes a point where you have to monetize what you're doing. That's really important. And I agree that your voice is an instrument, and words really do matter as well. So I saw you speak on stage. It was the Global Women's Summit a couple of years ago. You are really entertaining, engaging. You use lots of humor. You are a really great speaker, Harry. I just want to share some of the incredible names that you have spoken on stage with. You've spoken on stages with Sir Richard Branson, Lord Alan Sugar, Lady Michelle Mone, President Bill Clinton. That's incredible. Gary Vee, Robert and Kim Kawasaki, Anthony Robbins. That is some CV. That is absolutely incredible, Harry.
And you know what? It's when I hear that, I have a lot of people that approach me and say, Harry, you've spoken on Tony Robbins' stage. I want to do that. And I always say to people, my intention, that was what I never set out to do that. I never set out to do that. And then as your audience, you know, they want us to talk about business. There's a couple of things on business I would always say is, most of us that achieve that level isn't what we set out to do. It's the biggest rule I can give you is always add value first. Right?
Yes.
Add value first. I talk about left hand, right hand. In my left hand I go through phases in my life. In my left hand, there was a time when it was all about how to turn your worst days into best days. This would be my PhD. This would be my mastery. This is the thing I'm going to keep studying. I don't care where everybody else listens. I am going to do this, right? On my right hand, I always look at who's my community. This is a massive rule in business. If this could be your solution, your transformation, your left hand, what you do. On the right hand, it was who I do it for, my community. And at that time, it was all about young people. And that was what I was all about, bring the two together. When it came to speaker training, how do you become great as a speaker? How to go from an average speaker to world class, or how to go from a great speaker to a professional speaker. I made it my business to keep learning, and never stop. And then on this hand, it was like, right, who am I going to go and do that for? And I looked at a few, promoters, platforms, and I went and I studied them. I got to know about them. And then as I got to know about them, they got to know about me. And some of those people you listed are not only people I speak with, they're people I get to help fine tune their own speaking, because people got to know about this secret weapon, Harry Singha, who is around and so on. And sometimes you only have to give people a slight little shift to help them. But I listen and I look at that, and as grateful as I am, about speaking on stages with those guys. It's really a humbling aspect of, well, what does it take to get there? What does it take for them to do it? What are they doing? And then learning from that process. Because when you talked about monetizing, I always sit there and I think to myself, as speakers, you have to switch between your altruistic and then also having a business. So it's a bit like, when counselors and therapists were like, I'm a great counselor and therapist, but I've not got the business side. You either have to have someone in a team that takes care of it, or you have to become intelligent in those other areas. And being with those guys, you learn so many other things from it, but it's a blessing. It's not so much about who I was sharing the stage with. In my own personal terms, it was, when you're sharing a stage with Tony Robbins, that means you're speaking to a larger group of people who
serving more people
in your community. Yeah, absolutely.
You have shared so many pearls of wisdom, Harry. You are very art-centered. You're all about service. I really respect the work that you're doing. I really admire you. You also went on to win a Global Humanitarian Award in 2017 as well, didn't you?
Yeah. I'm not a big fan of awards. I remember there was a time when there was coaching awards, and every year I was winning the coaching award. I was like, at some point you want to turn around and go, it's not because you're winning it. It's because it was about youth coach. When I was winning youth coaching award, he was the youth coach of the year. I was like, well, how is anybody competing if I've already, because I started so young, there were so many things we were doing. And then the whole awards thing started to become about vote for me, whoever gets the most votes, and it started becoming about social media likes. But I always think awards are something that someone gives you rather than something you go for. But the award that you mentioned, it came from a group of global change makers. There was 100 of them. Every year they would get together and they would talk about, and many of these people that were winning this award were in their 60s or 70s. It's actually, I don't even put it on my thing. It's a Lifetime Achievement Award, right? So I received a Lifetime Achievement Award in my 40s, right? And but I really valued it because it was just the thing about, Humanitarian Achievement Award from other humanitarians. That was the real part of it. And it was, because when I hit my 40s, I spent 30 years providing service in a way. And I know it sounds corny. I know it sounds like as if I'm just being too about it, but it was a celebration of all of the people that I had had the privilege to work with and serve. There's no way I can do all of that on my own. So yeah, the Humanitarian Award in 2017 was a celebration of all the work that all the people, past, present, and even future. So it's the one I do acknowledge more than most. But yeah, thanks for mentioning that, man.
Very well deserved. We are coming up to the end of the show, Harry, but before we come to the end of the show, I just want to talk a little bit about the Harry Singha Foundation and what that has to offer as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, I think foundations, I speak at a lot of business and investment events and seminars, and usually the promoters are like, Harry, talk about your foundation. And I was like, yes, because I always say some people think that you should create a foundation when you started making your millions and billions, when you really made it. And I would say, what is the word that I just said? Foundations. If you're going to build a house, when are you going to build the foundations? And they go, oh, you're first. I said, well, why do you think it's called a foundation? Right? And that's when I always said, if people can find out something that they're passionate about or something that pisses them off, like an injustice to humanity that you want to make a difference to, stop moaning about it, do something, and then create your foundation around that. Either do a little bit of time, a little bit of energy, resources, people, put something into that. But the best way to explain it, and we'll say my foundation is the opportunity for me to give back the gifts that I never had as a child. I would have loved someone to come and tell me how to manage my emotions, how to be stepping up and, you know, doing more, helping people. That helplessness I felt as a kid at home. My mum didn't have anybody to turn to. There was no one near. My mum felt just staying at home and putting up with everything was the best thing she could do for her kids. So when I created a foundation, it was like, well, what did I need? What did my mum need? And that's what I created. So now we're like 35 years later into all the service, and that's what we still do. Youth leadership. So I personally have been involved in most of the major youth leadership programs around the world. That was my brand for years. It was just youth leadership, youth. It still is. But now we've got those young people that went through our leadership programs and now running things. And I feel more humble with just by being the person behind the scenes. But when it comes to women's empowerment, you know, there'll always be a need for youth leadership, and they'll look for some strange reason when we, you know, Mark, you and I talk about equality often, but you know, we're sitting in 2021 and we're still talking about women can't walk home alone without worrying about what's going to happen to them, the inequality in pay, but the amount of suffering that women still have to go through, you know, it's a huge task. So yeah, the foundation, we have a women's empowerment summit, we have a youth leadership programs, but more importantly, we champion some of the charities. And the current one is in Uganda, where 700 young girls aged about 12 or 13 who've been raped by family members who are now having babies. You just imagine this very small, slight young girl having a baby growing in her is a major challenge anyway, the mental health. And it's just, I think the best way to end it, Mark, is through my foundation and through all the work I do, I get to see the worst of human behavior. But my foundation allows me to work with so many amazing individuals who are the best of human behavior. So I think that's probably the best way to put it on what happens with the foundation.
You're a true gentleman, Harry, and you're a true inspiration. I thoroughly enjoyed having a conversation with you. If there is anyone out there watching that wants to find their authentic voice, become a better speaker, or maybe they're really elite at what they're doing, but they want to take it to the next level, what is the best way for them to connect with you, Harry?
Mark, that's such a great question, because you know what? So many people I know will say to people, oh, go speak to Harry and go speak to Harry on this, whether it's speaking, whether it's service. And I was like, I wish they could just filter it slightly. So this is the way I would filter it for your people. Mark, is this. If you want to become a greater speaker, before you have a conversation with me, I want you to get one thing. If you want to serve more, I want you to get one thing. And that word is clarity. The number of people that will approach me and say, hey, I want to speak on audiences of tens of thousands of people, and I want to earn this. And I go, why? The why isn't just what's the drive. It's like many people think that that's the only course of action to achieve it. So the best way is, I would say, yeah, you got my link there. It says harrysingha.com links. But I'd always say, even before you take a speaking program or anything, I always say, have a clarity call. Get clear about what it is you want to achieve. Why do you want to achieve that? And what is in the way right now? What is blocking you from achieving it? What you think is blocking you might not be. So I would always say to anyone, whether you're a speaker, there are so many tools that you'll find on my links. If you're in a position where you're like, hey, this is what I really want to do, then yeah, let's have a call. But the call will be just to get clarity, because I'm not interested in giving you something just because you think that's what you need to achieve something that you think you need. I'd rather be giving you exactly what you want for the thing that you absolutely desire. That's what I would say. So thank you for putting that, Mark, because that's a when it says harrysingha.com links, it's like, depends on when you're watching or what time you're watching this. Things will change, but you can pretty much find the best route, the best support on that link at the time.
So get clarity first and then book your call. Go to harrysinger.com/links. That's harrysinger.com/links. Harry, thank you so much for coming on to the Brilliance Business TV show. I thoroughly enjoyed having a conversation with you.
My pleasure, Mark. And one thing I will add on that is when we spoke, my Pat, if you are contacting me to become a speaker, but you already identify as a survivor, someone who's overcome an adversity, and in spite of it, you're still successful, then when you apply to come have a call with me, let me know that, because that's my current passion at the moment, taking those people who have survived an adversity and giving them all the worst day, best day stuff, and then also world-class speakers. So just mention it, that just say the word, I'm a survivor, when you're having a call, and we'll have a different conversation. But Mark, it's been an honor spending time with you. I appreciate that. And I trust we've added value to your people here.
You've added more than value. It's been an absolutely great conversation, Harry. Thank you once again. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to Brilliance Business TV, conversations with leading experts in business. Until next time, bye for now.